Hi, today's how-to video is how to connect your SCADA system to Azure using the Indicium DataBus. First thing we need to do is check that our license will let us connect firstly to our SCADA system and secondly to Azure. Let's open up our license manager and check our license and see what access we have. So you can see here on the top right we have Azure Table Storage, which is where we're going to store our data in today's video. And scrolling down we can see a few different SCADA plugins are enabled: Modbus, OPC DA and OPC HDA. For today's video we're going to use OPC DA and we're going to connect that to a OPC simulator. Okay, let's now create a data source to connect to our SCADA system. So from the menu on the left, select New Data Source. Let's call it OPC DA. And from the list of plugins, select OPC DA. Now click Save. Now over on the right here we have the parameters that we need from a server level for the OPC server. One of the parameters is the URL of the server, which you can type in here, or you can use the search function to search for all the OPC servers registered on this machine. This server here is the Metricon OPC simulator that I have installed, so let's select that. And now that we've got that selected, we have the other parameters we can set. There's the private username and password or the NT username and password. Private username and password is used by systems like Clear SCADA that require a non-Windows account to connect, and the NT ones are if you use a Windows account. Let's just save that now. Now scroll down, we need to now create an input item to extract data out of our SCADA system. So let's just call this, we'll come up with a name, Sawtooth. And we'll add this input item. So we can now see up the top here in the breadcrumbs we're onto the second level. We have an input item called Sawtooth. We're going to jump into its data collection mode here and we're going to change it to subscription. So in this mode we're going to register for changes in data to be sent to us. This is the fastest way to get data out of a SCADA system, as it will send it when it changes. If a value doesn't change very often, then this way won't get us sent data very often. Now let's search our SCADA system for a tag, and we can see here we have a bunch of different tags. Let's select that one and hit save. Now we want to test that our configuration works, so let's just test the input here and we can see we've got a value back, and if we keep running that we can see that the value keeps changing. Now we need to set up a data source to save our data into the cloud. So let's create a new data source over here and we'll call it Azure Table Storage. And we'll select a plugin of Azure Table Storage. Now to connect to the cloud, we need a connection string. So I'm just going to grab one that I prepared earlier and paste it in here and click Save. This is a secure connection string. You don't want anyone else to have access to this. So once it's saved in our database, it's encrypted. Now let's go back and find our OPC DA connection and open up our input item for Sawtooth and create a subscription pipeline into Azure. Our endpoint that we want to add is Azure Table Storage. We can send the data back to OPCDA if we want, but today we're going to send it to Azure, so let's add that as an endpoint. If we click on that, we can see the configuration options for this. We don't have to set a connection string or anything at this point, that's been pre-configured, but we can choose what table we want to put the data in. This might be handy if you want to sort of group data by type or location. We have one client that will put irrigation schemes as the table name, others that will just leave it in time series as a default. The next item here is the identifier that we want to use. This is choosing which URI do we use to identify the data when we save it. By default, input item is selected. That's choosing the ID of sawtooth as it comes out of the SCADA system. But we can choose output item, which is the ID of this level after we've potentially manipulated the data. We're not going to manipulate the data today, so let's just leave it as input item. And we'll hit save. Now the data we're getting out of SCADA today is going to update approximately once every second. We can write that to the cloud once every second if we want, but that can take a lot of resources and mean that our network connection is constantly active. So one thing we can do here is add a holding queue plugin to our pipeline and configure this pipeline to store at least 10 points of data before it sends it to Azure. So we've configured that up now and we'll save that. Now we need to enable our pipeline. So let's just jump back through the tree here, enable our subscription pipeline to Azure, and back to OPCDA here, and enable our sawtooth item. Okay, let's now have a look at our Azure table storage configuration after we set up that data feed into it. We'll just click on that and we'll scroll down here and we can see in our list of input items that a sawtooth input item has been automatically created for us. And that's to extract data out of Azure and bring it into the DataBus. Let's click on that. We'll set up a default period. In this case, I set it to extract the last hour's worth of data. And over here we can see that it's automatically configured the URI for us based on what URI we selected in the subscription pipeline. Let's hit run now and see what happens when we run this. So it's got the logging output on the left for us, so we can see if there's any errors trying to connect to Azure. And we can see here that it's run the Azure Table Storage plugin to retrieve data for this URI, and it's managed to extract 309 points from Azure. Those points are outputted on the right here as a table, and we can see those points are displayed for us. That's now showing you how to connect your SCADA system to Azure. Thanks for listening.